How are you doing? Got a message on straightfelon.com the other day asking me how to survive as a gay man in prison. And at first I thought he was just asking me like out of general entertainment, but then I found out yeah, he was actually going to prison. And he didn't get into like what he did or how much time he was facing, but I really liked the question. I thought it would make a good video. And I figured a lot of my viewers might be curious themselves. I remember when I used to cam, people I would tell prison stories. And people would often say, "Oh, there's no way my gay ass would survive prison." And I'm here to tell you the gayest of asses do survive prison. First of all, let's talk about the actual, the risk. Let's look at the numbers. And these are actual statistics I found. So across state prisons, only 2% of deaths are the result of murder. The vast majority are illness, and even like suicide and ODs are above murder. And across the whole all state prison systems in 2018, there were only 120 murders total, which was way less than what I thought. So it's not like this instant death factory that everybody thinks it is. Take like sex offenders, for example. Everybody thinks like if you go into prison as a sex offender, you're just going to die. You know, I remember when Larry Nasser, that diddler gymnastics teacher or whatever, when he got convicted, everybody in Michigan was like, "Oh man, he's not going to make it." He's still chugging along fine. You know, go on your local sex offender registry map and look at all those dots that pop up on the screen. All those guys apparently made it through the correction system, without losing too many limbs. So it isn't, you need to get this idea of like death and surviving out of your head. What it's going to be, what's way more likely, is general bullying and extortion. That's the big one. People stealing from you, people trying to get you to have your family send them money. And being gay doesn't guarantee that you're going to be a victim to this, but it is one of the factors that makes you more of a mark. And there's a lot of factors. Being young, being small, being physically small, coming from money, being educated. If you speak well, people notice that. I'm going to be honest, being white, that makes you a big target. When you're a young white kid, no good, no bueno. Basically the further you are from just like a general street gangbanger thug type, and I don't mean that as a racial thing, white guys too, the more you are likely to be seen as a victim. So here I am with a little bit of advice on how to not be. Okay, so the first one is speech. And yes, I know that not every gay guy has gay voice, but for those that do, it would be a dead giveaway, so it's something that I have to address. So I don't know if gay guys do, what is it called, like code switching. You know how certain white people, once some black people come around, will start dropping like some y'alls and sup, like they're in one of those early 2000s McDonald's commercials that really targeted the urban population. I don't know if that's something that, well, I guess you would have to be in the closet to do that. And that's kind of got to suck, man, to like totally try to change the way you talk. And I don't know if you could even do that, because I mean, in moments of excitement and anger, you got to revert back into it like, a bilingual Mexican woman when they get mad. So I'm not sure. And I think it's safe to say, too, that on average, and I'm not trying to make too many generalizations, but on average, the dudes who speak in, what we know as gay voice tend to be a little bit articulate, not super, just a little bit more articulate than average. And that is not going to go over well in prison, because that's another aspect of speech. If you talk too educated, people will not like that. People will not only see it as weakness because you're educated, but they look at it as like condescending and arrogant that you're using big, and by big I mean medium, words that they can't understand. So if this is something that you could possibly have any control over, it's definitely something you would want to reel back in a little bit. I mean, when I go to jail, and I pray it never happens again, but when I did, I wouldn't speak in this way. I kind of dumbed it down a little bit. I didn't go all, full, crazy with it. But I mean, in Saginaw County Jail, if you're a white guy, you say the N-word. It's weird if you don't. I'm not saying should be a rule for the world, but you adapt to the place you're in. It makes you stand out less. Basically, the further away you are, at least in appearance, from kind of a scumbag, thug, street criminal, the worse it's going to be for you. The more you're going to stick out and be likely the target of extortion and bullying. So let's go on to number 2. So hiding your voice kind of assumes that you'd want to hide being gay because, like I said, it's not the end all be all on if you'll be targeted, but it is a factor. So if you could hide it, would you want to? So prisons are pretty usually self-segregating. So in Michigan, it wasn't as hardcore as like California where the races don't mix, but the gays and straights pretty much didn't mix. You would see straight guys going over there and talking to them, and you would see the dudes who would, chase him around the yard. But for the most part, I think a lot of them probably had their man, but whatever they were doing was like behind closed doors and not public. And I'm sure there were people that knew. Prison is a very public place. You can't really hide that. But for the most part, at least where I was, it wasn't like the movies where you see like, a big black dude walking around and some little white kid is like holding his pocket. It wasn't like that. So if you are openly gay, it would at least give you a chance to be part of a group. Because that's the flip side to that coin. You might be ostracized from the majority of the population, but every prison yard, I'm sure, has the gay group, the sissies. That's what they're called in MDOC. I didn't choose it. Don't get mad at me. It's what they call themselves. But the sissies. Now, there's camaraderie in that. If you want the camaraderie. Not everybody does. Gay Mike was one of them. Gay Mike didn't interact with the rest of the sissies on the yard. From what I understand, it's like very cliquish. And this is just kind of my outside observation. But they very much seem to have like, they were very much a certain type of gay guy. Specifically like kind of a Paris is Burning black ballroom type gay guy. And
we have all got places to be, okay? So you're going to wait your turn.
And not everybody fits into that. And I think a lot of my fan base probably wouldn't fit into that. So there's question on if you really, want to be part of that group, because they're a very tight-knit group. It's not like joining a gang, I wouldn't say, but you're in with them thick once you are. So there's a question in that. It's definitely something to ponder. And how could I forget about the gay boy gangsters? The gay boy gangsters, I cannot confirm if this is real. At first, I thought it was for sure like a joke and then the MDOC, like, oh, there goes the gay boy gangsters. But I've met dudes who swore like they were on prison yards where the gay boy gangsters were like a legit gang there and they had, GBG tattoos. And I think there's a guy on YouTube that talks about the gay boy gangsters in MDOC. I guess it's kind of, like, you ever hear like the Rainbow Mafia out west? You know what I heard somebody say in prison one time? You can't be all that weak if you can take up your, you know what I mean? You can't be that weak if you can do it. And at the time, I agreed with it with a lack of personal experience. And now with some personal experience, you got a pain tolerance for sure. You can take a whooping. That's no joke. Okay, number 3, being in a relationship. No. Like the rest of these I wrote a script for and had to do over and over. No, this one I already can tell you no. It reminds me of when people ask me like, would I have to join a gang for protection or should I join a gang? And I'm like, no, that's going to get you in way more trouble. All the people I know who got stabbed, all in gangs. It's like the number one way to get in more danger. You know what I mean? Yeah, it just seems like the same thing where you think, oh, maybe I should get with somebody for protection. I think that's going to get you way more problems than it's going to solve, because a lot of those dudes in there, they ain't right in the head. And then what happens when somebody gets jealous? And I've just heard all kinds of stories. Man, I knew a dude, he was my bunkie in iDrop. Q was his name. And he told me a story about he was bunking with his boyfriend in level 4. And they got in a fight. They almost killed each other, stabbed. He had a big scar on his neck from getting stabbed with a pencil because he was like choking his boyfriend trying to kill him, I think. And the boyfriend got up and stabbed him in the neck with a big pen, and they're just both laying there against the lockers, and then they like kissed and made up. He's like, man, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to have to stab this crazy bitch. So he said, I'm thinking, oh my God. And then I asked him, I'm like, wait, what was the fight over? Q told me, this cracked me up. He goes, he wouldn't give me a kiss. I said, you gotta be kidding me. He said when you know, we get down when he wants to get down, but then I want to kiss and I can't get a kiss. And I was like, that's a fair point. I don't know about, you know, stabbing with big pencils or big pens, but it's a fair point. I can understand the man's frustration and, you know, feeling a little bit, you know, taken for granted. But yeah, and I think that's a great example though of just, you know, there's emotions in a relationship, man. Like I was just in an argument with my partner this morning, and I'm in the real world where we don't hit women, we don't hit our partners, blah blah blah. But in prison, you would be in a relationship while you're also in this dynamic of I can't take any disrespect, and you know, we don't solve problems with our words. We solve it with violence. So what happens when you have those normal feelings of jealousy towards your partner in prison? And I bet that's a real common thing, dude. I bet, because I've seen it, man. That's something that happens, man. Two of these guys will be going at the same sissy, and somebody will get stabbed over it, you know. So what happens when you have those hardcore emotions and you're in a place where the norm is to stab somebody when you're feeling that hot? You know, I think it just does not go well. And that leads to another part, which is sex. And that's one thing. I think Game Mike did have sex in prison with his boyfriend, but he told me, man, that's a horrible idea, and I believe him. You can't get no protection in there. And God, I know, like with the tattoo guns and the needles that were getting passed around, there was tons of disease. So I can't imagine that would be, and I don't say that to on any judgmental type shit, but that would be a real, I feel like that would be a real roll of the dice, man. Like having sex in prison. Like people often ask me that, and I try not to be rude about it, but that would be, I mean, that would be my number one fear for sure, man. You just don't know in there. And you got to think too, you can't just go to the health clinic and get tested. What are you going to do? Right? You know, you send a medical kite like, hey, I've been having sex in here. Can I get a blood test? Like that ain't going to go over well, man. Not to mention, sexual misconduct is a major rule violation, which that's got to be a bad one to go in front of the parole board for. Rumor was back in the day, if you got a sexual misconduct ticket, they would mail it home to your family. And that was like a way they would try to discourage people from having sex. Like, yo, we're going to put you on blast in front of your family. So yeah, I think in general, and maybe I'm a hypocrite because I shared needles in prison, so maybe I shouldn't talk, but I think in general, that's it's not a good idea to have sex in prison. Really bad idea. Although I will say, when you first go into prison, you get a blood test. So theoretically, you could, you know, ask your partner, like, yo, produce paperwork, homie. Let's see. So, yeah, I don't know. But in general, I would really stray away from that. Ugh. I'm really glad with it. I like how this one turned out. In conclusion, man, there's a lot of ways to go about it. You just got to think about it. But when it comes to surviving, I can pretty much guarantee you will survive. I would like to make a part 2 for this video, just general survivability tips. Like one thing I didn't get into was money. If your family's sending you tons of money in prison, makes you a big target unless you know how to handle yourself. So that's another thing. But in general, I think this video kind of went over it. I had fun making this. I want to thank you. Please like and subscribe. Check out my website. But better yet, just keep watching. Thank you guys.